Okay, are we all here? Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me. Just some housekeeping. Could anyone who can't hear me clearly wave at Robert? Hopefully he can do something about it. Also, I can't see you all on the screen at the same time, so I'm not ignoring you, but I can only see so many people at once. So welcome to this service of religious worship. We spend the coming hour in fellowship with one another. Though we may be separated by distance, we are brought together in spirit. We give thanks for all that we have been blessed with today. And I will start the service with the lighting of my own custom chalice. And if we can join in with the words, if you have the order of the service in front of you, we will say together, we light this candle as a symbol of our faith. By its light, may our vision be illumined. By its warmth, may our fellowship be encouraged. And by its flame, may our yearnings for peace, justice, and the life of the Spirit be enkindled. Thank you. And it's just like being in chapel because my chalice is struggling to light my lighter. But I see that the Huadines have managed to get their candle lit, so we shall use that for the service. Thank you. We shall now have Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Oops.
Thank you, Robert. And I ought to point out today that I'm not going to be joining in with the singing. It's not against any of you, but I'm doing you all a favour, please believe me. And Robert is in fine voice, so he will be leading us. Now, our opening words for worship this morning are adapted from Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-discipline. If we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit, bearing one another's burdens. And now we come to a time for any candles of joy and concern. I don't think we've done this online before, but I'm going to attempt it this morning. Rob, you're going to have to marshal for me, if that's all right. And can I ask that if anyone does have any joys or concerns to share with the congregation, you please keep it brief. Thank you.
Doesn't look like anybody's indicating to me that they want to. No, I can't see anybody.
Okay.
I'll have one. Just to say thank you. I think that's a lovely idea, and I just want to say thank you. Give thanks for the relative good health and of everyone, and also to light a special candle for Kath Wilding and her family.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shannon. Do we have anybody else? No? Okay. May all our prayers, both spoken and unspoken, be heard. And now we come to a time for prayer, and this prayer is adapted by the author and educationalist Sid Hedges. Eternal God, in whose perfect realm no sword is drawn but the sword of justice, and no strength known but the strength of love, so guide and inspire the work of all who seek your commonwealth, that all peoples may seek and find their security, not in force of arms, but in the perfect love that casts out fear, and in the fellowship revealed to us through the life of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Now we come to our first hymn, all from the green today. Breathe on me, breath of God. Thank you, Robert.
Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew, that I may love what thou dost love, and do what thou would do. Breathe on me, breath of God, until my heart is pure, until with thee I will one will to do or to endure. Breathe on me, breath of God, till I am wholly thine, till all this early part of me glows with thy fire divine. Breathe on me, breath of God, so I shall never die, but live with thee the perfect life of thine eternity.
Thank you, Robert. And now we come to a time for the prayer that Jesus taught us. Please feel free to join in if you wish. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And now we come to our reading this morning, which is one of my favourites. It's The Guest House by the mystic Rumi, hopefully a favourite of some others. And he says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if there are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." And now we come to our second hymn, Immortal, Invisible, God Only Wise. Take it away, Robert.
Immortal, invisible, God only wise, in light inaccessible, hid from eyes. Most blessed, most glorious, the Ancient of Days, Almighty, victorious, thy great name we praise. Unresting, unhasting, and silent as light, no wanting, no wasting, thou rulest in might. Thy justice like mountains, high soaring above, thy clouds which are fountains of goodness and love. Thou givest both great and small. In all life thou livest the true life of all. We blossom and flourish as leaves on the trees, and wither and perish, but naught changeth thee. Great Father of glory, pure Father of light, thine angels adore thee, all veiling their sight. O Lord, would we render, or help us to see, is only the splendor of light hideth thee.
Thank you, Robert, and indeed Barry. Now we come to a time for prayer, which will be followed by a few minutes for your own silent and private prayers, and this will be followed by a musical meditation. And I will introduce this time of prayer by a reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 to 13. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable and keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless, but love will last forever. Now, our knowledge is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only a part of the whole picture. But when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away childish things. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a mirror. But then we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I now know is partial and incomplete. But just as God knows me completely, then these three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Amen. Thank you, Barry, as always, that lovely music. And now we come to our third hymn, Come Down, O Love Divine.
Visit it with thine own heart, O Comforter, draw near, within my heart appear, and kindle it thy holy flame bestowing. Oh, let it freely burn, till earthly passions turn to dust and ashes in its heat consuming. And let thy glorious light shine ever on my sight, and clothe me round the while my path illumine. Let holy charity mine outward vestures be, and loneliness becomes my inner clothing. True lowliness of heart, which takes the humbler part, and o'er its own shortcomings weeps with loathing. And so the yearning strong, with which the soul will long, shall far outpass the human telling. For none can guess its grace till love creates a place wherein the Holy Spirit makes a dwelling.
Thank you. Now we come to our address this morning, which I entitled Fruits of the Spirit, and the subtitle for the service, Taking Refuge in the Garden of the Soul. Now, since lockdown began, I, like probably many others of you, and certainly those that have been sending in pictures for the newsletter, have been spending much of my free time in my garden. And truth be told, I'm not as green-fingered by nature as I suspect others of you are, but I am enjoying learning the names of and how to care for each shrub, bush and flower as they flourish and bloom over the past few weeks. And these days in particular, we can seem cut off from the cycle of the seasons. Everything comes pre-prepared from nurseries and often from shores far flung. And I sometimes wonder if there's any point in celebrating the work of which our hands have not touched, or the bounties of fields in far off places which we will never see. Of course, I do think there is a point to celebrate and to give thanks for what we have received. But I don't want to focus on flowers and fruits in the literal sense. The fruits I want to focus on are those of the Spirit. What on earth is a fruit of the Spirit? Remember our opening words. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-discipline. If we live by the Spirit, let us also walk by the Spirit, bearing one another's burdens, and so follow the example of Jesus. Oh, very well, but how might the seeds of such spiritual fruit be sown within us? How can we tend and nurture them as we would the plants in our gardens? How can we protect them against the harshness of our lives' changing seasons and circumstances? And how can we share the fruits of these seeds with others? Let us consider an example. Where do the seeds of fruit come from? Well, if you can grab yourself an apple from the cupboard, halve it and examine the contents, what do you see? Seeds originate and grow within the fruit itself as it develops and ripens. And here, I don't know if you have the order of service. I did put some pictures in. I think we do know what the inside of an apple looks like. I was going to do it for your demonstration, but I wasn't sure if I wouldn't cut myself. And that might be a bit of a distraction, but we can imagine it. So, might it be that the seeds of our spiritual fruit exist in us already, just waiting for the right conditions in order to flourish? For many plants, if you shut them off from the light or deprive them of water, if you cram them in pots too small or set them in soil which lacks the nutrients they need, then many plants will wither, and their fruits, if they develop at all, will be stunted and withered. Now you might think that this is too simple a metaphor to describe the flourishing or withering of our spiritual fruits, the aforesaid love, patience, kindness, and so on. But not so fast. Sometimes the best conditions for these fruits of the Spirit aren't necessarily a cozy life with all the trimmings. Fruits and plants can grow in harsh climates and conditions too. For some plants, the best harvest can be brought in after a cold winter. And on this point, I rely on my mum's word from experience that carrots and other root vegetables are all the sweeter after a sharp frost. And her marvellous carrot soup is certainly all the evidence I require. And I'm also growing some peas as well, for those of you who don't know. I've started this season. So we shall see if they're all the sweeter after the harsh winter. Fingers crossed. But even if we remain unconvinced, recall the earlier reading from the Sufi mystic Rumi. Rumi uses the example of a house as opposed to plants or fruit, but the message is the same. A house whose contents are swept into the street by a host of ungrateful guests is often like the chaos caused by our dark thoughts and inner struggles. Sometimes we must weather the frosts and fraught seasons in our material lives in order that our spiritual lives may develop further as we grow in experience and wisdom. So too, the skill of those workers whose job it is to plant the seeds and nurture the young plants, then harvest their crop, learn their craft through years' hard work, through labour and long practice. We learn by doing. Our muscles strengthen through the work of our hands and fingers, and they learn their craft through touch and intimate contact with the tools they use, the blooms they caress, and the bounties plucked from branches, vines, and soil. How do we learn patience? By having it tested. How do we learn kindness? By being presented with opportunities to practice kindness. How do we learn to discipline ourselves? By experiencing temptation. Of course, we do not always succeed, but the fruits of the Spirit can only be harvested after long experience and practice. You cannot learn to love by reading a book on love. You learn to love by becoming intimate with another, by allowing yourself to be vulnerable and open to them. We learn to love by loving. And so too we give so that we may receive. We sow and reap what we have sown. And like the soil that yields to the gardener's trowel, we too have to be receptive, willing to be open to new conditions and experiences, and to be vulnerable, so that another's spiritual fruit of kindness or compassion can ripen and their seeds find fertile ground within our souls. So which fruits of the Spirit can each of us cultivate? Be open to the unexpected. Share your joys and sorrows with one another. It is not only the outward conditions of our lives that secure the roots of our fulfillment. It is how we learn to cultivate the sometimes harsh and difficult conditions in life that yields the greatest harvest of our souls. So may it be. And just before we move on, I'd like to point out, for those of you that do have an order of service in front of you, the tree that you see in the bottom is actually the tree at the bottom of my garden. And it is now, since that picture was taken, weighted down with blossom. And if you're wondering where all the bees and insects have gone, they're in my garden. I have never seen a tree so alive with insects and beetles and bees. It's quite a sight to behold. I was hoping to get a picture of it, a more up-to-date picture, but unfortunately the sun wasn't out when I went out yesterday and all the bees had vanished. But I think they're back now. So I just thought I'd let you know that. Okay, we'll go on to our fourth hymn, and this is one of my favourites, and I hope you can all join in at home. This is my song, O God of all the nations, otherwise known as the Song for Peace. Thank you.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too and clover, we're as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou
And our final blessing this morning is one that I was introduced to by the Reverend Celia Cartwright. She told me it was one of her favourites. I'm sure she was telling the truth because it's now one of mine as well. It's May the Road Rise With You. Now, I don't know if we have any music for this. I was going to speak it. Are we? Do we have any music for it, Robert? Or am I?
Sadly, no. I have the picture and the actual thing as well that I can present.
No worries. We can say it
not
together
me.
if we wish.
So I'll put it on the screen.
Oh, go on. There we go. May the road rise with
you.
May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Now we will sing together, Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Thank you. Are we going to have the organ postlude during coffee?
We are. We can play that now.
Okay. Well, this is now a time for anyone who wishes to put the kettle on, and I'm going to put my kettle on, and we can come back for a time of fellowship. I hope you all enjoyed the service.